My name's John Sciandra. I am a retired Army Airborne paratrooper that is now a lead assessor doing CMMC. For some reason at KLC, we keep hiring ex-military. And so we decided we ought to just get together and kind of shoot the breeze about CMMC and maybe how it relates to our military experiences and whatever else comes up. So let me just pass it around the horn, guys, and give yourselves a little intro.
Sure. Thanks, John. Jeff Snyder. I did 10 years in the Coast Guard as an IT and separated in 2019. Turn it over to you, Will.
Sure. Will Clary. I did just 4 years in the Navy. Just happy to be here and be part of this team.
That's awesome. And guys, we're all ex-military. I'm jumping on this. A Coastie and a Navy guy, come on. Army wins. It would be fun just to learn how each of us and you, because I don't know 100% how you got from the military to here. I did a short stint. I went to Beltway Bandit, as we call them here in Washington area, government contractor. I was a full stack developer. This was pre-Google time. There were a bunch of different search engines that were real popular, but ours was kind of centered around the defense problems. You guys ever hear of that name, Alan Paller?
No.
He had a company called the SANS Institute, and he came into my office, and we met, introduced, and he's like, "Well, John," he says, "I appreciate your willingness to take this survey that I'm doing. I'm trying to find out if I should," and this is him talking, if he should switch his company from training system administration topics to getting into this new thing that was starting to bloom, cybersecurity. Well, it wasn't cybersecurity. Cyber came later, but it was computer security and information security, otherwise known in the DoD circles as information assurance, which is what I actually got my master's degree in from JMU. So I took this survey, and it just kept gnawing at me. Here I am, a coder, and there's this new exciting thing, securing systems, defending against hackers and nation states. I pitched it to the owner, and he's like, "There's no way we're doing this. I never heard of this. This is nothing," he says. From that moment, I knew my days were numbered there, and I landed a job at the Army CERT, which was just being stood up, and that's where I became an incident handler. That's really where I got involved with cybersecurity. I later went on to be a FBI threat hunter. In those days, we didn't use an app. We tracked through signals and kicked down doors, so that was fun. But that's kind of how I got started into this whole world of cyber defense, I guess you'd call it. What about you guys?
I'll take it. I got out of the Navy. I really didn't know what exact. Well, I knew I wanted to go somewhere medically or, focus on a medical concentration. So I had already finished my bachelor's degree. I was shadowing an oral surgeon. I had completed almost all of my coursework to take the DAT and go to dental school. About that time, a good friend of mine from the Navy said, "Hey, I have a really great job opportunity for you working for the railroad of all things." So it was very much a head and a heart decision. I think my heart was still in dentistry, and I was just looking at the dental school and the years of residency I had and thinking I kind of feel like I could make a more positive impact somewhere else. Started working at the railroad as a rail traffic controller. While I was there, another friend of mine said, "I think you'd be really good at this." He knew some folks working for a bank, and I ended up leaving the railroad and going into a payments risk analyst role for a large bank. That's where I really got interested in risk assessment, IT, all these different things. So while I was there, I got some security certifications of my own, started looking around for jobs, and a little haphazardly ended up right back in the DoD space. So I was working for a civilian company that helped secure web applications for the Army and Air Force under NIST 853, which is RMF, Risk Management Framework. Found my way back into this space, and then the next obvious step when CMMC really started to peek its head over the horizon was that's where I want to be. It's a new framework. I was really excited about it. So did my training to get involved here and thought it's just one more way to make that positive difference. I think for a lot of us is that fiber that we're built of, what brought us to the military, and then what has us continuing to work now and wanting to give back.
I actually was an IT in the Coast Guard. And so I got a bunch of exposure to the risk management framework. It was really fun getting the ATO or authority to operate for classified and unclassified systems, filling out the 853, because you're not going to take down a Coast Guard system because it's part of emergency response. But I separated from the Coast Guard in 2019. I already had IT skills, so I passed CISP, and for the second time took Security Plus. I had let that certification lapse, thinking I was never going to use that. Worked for an MSP that had about 450 small businesses in their portfolio. I ended up responding to a bunch of ransomware attacks. I saw that it was a huge issue. All your information just locked up. It got under my skin. I don't like bullies. I also got a call from a recruiter asking, hey, would you like to do the risk management framework for Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center? I said, you had me at Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center. So I ended up being a information system security manager, getting the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center's programs through the authority to operate process. And then also because I had a bunch of hands-on experience as an IT, I managed to land as a lead cybersecurity engineer on a Northrop Grumman team that was updating and modernizing the Air Force's nuclear network. I was super stoked. That program came to a conclusion. Then my company asked me to go down the CMMC learning track and get certified. So I did that. I did some consulting work and helped companies go through that process. It made me really nervous because I didn't know what I was getting into as far as who the assessor was going to be and what essentially the body of evidence that they were going to be requesting. You can say that the assessment guide is very black and white, but the interpretation is not as far as the requirements. I didn't like the consulting side as much, so I transitioned. Well, I already had my CCA and was a lead CCA. I aligned myself with KLC because KLC has very rational, fair assessors. So that's how I became a lead assessor. And I really enjoy this because, yes, we get to work collaboratively with OSCs and we get to help out the warfighters.
One of the reasons I came to KLC, probably a big reason, is the high level of EQ, the emotional intelligence of the organization. It's just such a great place to work. That really grabbed me. How long did it take you guys before you stopped polishing your shoes?
So
I quit doing that in the military.
yeah, it turns out, John, they're flammable and fires on boats aren't a good thing.
It took me 3 years.
Oh, goodness.
Every day.
Wow.
And then I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, and it is interesting because I have a backpack that I used when I went to the Middle East. And it carried my ballistic plates, right? My ceramic plates. And on it was my PAT4 SWA unit patch. One of the engineers for the Sentinel program, which is the new Minuteman III, it's the updated to the Minuteman III ballistic missile. So he gave me a Sentinel patch. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, so I was like, ooh, do I really want to swap that out? But I realized my life is no longer defined by the Coast Guard. My life is defined by what I am doing now. So I swapped out that. And that's really for me when I put that Coast Guard hat down.
We're getting pretty good at doing some assessments for certain types of enclaves. We had an emergency request come in. We had to have a discussion if we were able to mobilize everything quick enough. And so we started throwing this term around, we can form a SWAT team assessment. They changed it to, well, this could be the expedite team. We got on the initial planning call with the OSC, and the next thing I know, Jeff reaches down, puts on his flak vest, and I'm like, oh my God, he did it. He did that. So I'm like, hold one, please. I went over and I put my flak vest on. Mine was desert camo. His was the OD, and it was pretty funny. But we then quickly realized our boss might be coming on the call, so we had to undon the flak vests.
Yeah. And just a side note, they were privately purchased, not strategically acquired.
Yeah.
Excellent.
We got to say that part.
Yeah, I have to say that caveat.
Yeah. And that actually turned out to be a really good assessment. The OSCs have to have a sense of humor as well, and those guys were awesome.
Yeah, those guys were prior service folks too, right? The Marine Corps?
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
We'll say maybe not necessarily related to our time in service, but many of us here, I know for Jeff and myself, we've been consultants and we've been in that hot seat too. So I think a little humor shows our human side and goes a long way in lowering the anxiety that a lot of these OSCs feel, because we've been there and it's been daunting and stayed up many a late night and woken up at crazy hours to try to placate and just figure out what exactly assessors want. So for us to have that human side, I think is awesome. We've been there, so we like to joke a little bit too.
Yeah.
We work hard and we play hard.
Yeah, it's not lost on us the fact that this is very dry material, right? We're asking 3.1.1a, how do you identify authorized users? And there's going to be 320 of these. So yeah, being a normal human being, saying, hey, we can have conversations. The one gentleman that we just spoke to yesterday likes to go shooting, building that rapport and talking to him. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've done probably 30 assessments now. I remember thinking back to my very first, even today, I'll admit to an OSC if I don't exactly know the right answer. If I'm evaluating their control implementation, and I'm going to have to, take this back to the other assessors and get the read on it. When I did my first assessment, there was only one other assessor. There was no reach back for information. I'm an Army guy. I run into it. I'm not going to back down. So I just started doing this assessment. I was trying to be very exacting, and I got into a discussion about the NTP situation for this one OSC, and I wanted to make sure that it was correct, and that if there were deviations among all of the servers they had, that it fell within the there's a prescribed deviation. It's got to be within 1 millisecond. Like if you're on time.nist.gov and someone else is on another time service, maybe Microsoft. I don't do that deep dive anymore. I see if they're compliant, and if they are, that's good enough. But it's funny how you learn so much and you come, to a different place. But that happened. You guys got anything like that?
Because I was an ISM and I had put or gone through the federal authority to operate process, having to basically explain how a program was compliant with, the NIST 853 controls. When I became an assessor, I just didn't want to be what I experienced. I get to be the assessor that I wish I had as a consultant.
I've been in, again, don't want to say terrible assessments, but they've not, I think that they've strayed away from the practical intent of assessment objectives sometimes. And I think that ego is something that anyone struggles with, so I don't think that it necessarily brings any value to the table if we let our ego stand in the way. I'll be very candid about one assessment. We're looking at digital media that has to be destroyed. And we as the assessing team are all looking at NIST 800-88 Rev 1. And the OSC team brought to our attention that there's a Rev 2 out and that the Rev 2 does not have a 1x5mm requirement in there. So before that entire team and my own personnel having to say, we're moving right along, you guys are exactly right. I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, well, I am going to go off this benighted standard. We need to be always learning, always sponges and absorbing that knowledge and never just fight on a hill that, is just because of our ego. And I think that we all try at KLC not to do that and to constantly be learning and bettering ourselves. We want to be those better assessors.
What I think KLC assessors pride themselves on is the assessment guide 800-171 is written at a very high level. And there are multiple ways to fulfill those requirements. So we have to interpret the control in the way that the OSC has applied that control. So if it's a VDI solution, or if it has endpoints, or it has now managed browsers, we have to assess the requirement and the assessment objective, how they have done their environment. And I think we do a pretty good job of that.
Sometimes, our guidance says, you have to score a point basically, but let's look at all the different sports that are out there. You don't score a touchdown the same way you hit a home run in baseball. Like, it just doesn't make sense for different applications. So what we have is score a point, get points on the board. And you have to then look at the environment and say, well, what game are we playing? What are we actually doing here, and see how that applies.
At KLC, and maybe they do it at other places, but we have a weekly meeting, and we are constantly trying to refine our knowledge of interpreting various controls. So that's pretty cool. Along those lines, that we try to meet and dial in our interpretation of the controls, it just I think it flows partly from our military backgrounds, right?
Yeah, definitely. One of the cultures, I guess, of the military is that sense of accountability. We always want to show up for the person next to us. My first rescue operation was to deliver a watering pump 60 miles offshore at 2 a.m. And it was rough sea state. When you're driving at night in a boat, when you get past the lights and you're out there in pitch black, you can't see the horizon. Anyways, super sketchy. I was scared, but there were 3 other guys with me, and I realized, I have a job to do. Like, I can't back out of this. Not only that, they weren't going to turn around. They're like, no, there's people's lives on the line, right? Yeah. Relating that to doing assessments, you never want to be the weakest link. So I never want to be the assessor that assessed a company that then, got hacked just because I pencil whipped something. I'm always going to do a thorough job. I'm always going to make it so that their environment is documented properly and thoroughly.
Yeah, I know for myself, I worked on jet engines, so we had a very direct line of how things that we did affected, lives.
Oh, yeah.
It all ran uphill. So if we're replacing an engine part, we have whole sets of documentation that we have to follow step by step, the same way as we're doing an assessment. We're checking every little requirement, and we want to do a very comprehensive job of that. I don't pride myself in finishing assessments early. I want to do my job as an assessor. And so, as we've noted before, some of those weeks can be long and grueling, but we have a job to do, and we take our work very seriously. So what we're doing here, it might just seem like, goodness, why are we focused so much on these little tiny details of a computer? Our friends and family that are still in, it's their lives downrange that we're really focused on, and that's why we do what we do.
Since Army leads the way, I think we have come to the end of this session. I think we should wrap it up. I thank you guys. This was a fun bantering back and forth. Tell anyone interested in CMMC or watching this, we are always available for you to reach out. We can't consult, but we can, point you in the right directions. And our website is actually very wonderful. You can go to klcconsulting.net. We have set our website up to be able to answer many of your questions. So reach out. We'd like to hear from you. We'll see you guys on the next one.